Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we're talking about a developing story, really. Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine was visiting the White House today to meet about a mineral deal that was supposed to take place. It was supposed to sign off on uh, a deal between the United States in which raw minerals would be exchanged for the United States' support, or sort of, I guess, basically for the United States, basically to have a stake in the outcome of the Ukrainian-Russian war that's going on right now. And it basically, the meeting went absolutely haywire because of arguments, and it seems to be a misunderstanding of what Vladimir Zelensky was willing to sign. The negotiations basically broke down, and I'll be showing you what that looked like. So this is what we have. Let's bring it up here. And I'm just going to put it a little on 1.25 speed, just in case there's sort of a, if somebody flags this trying to claim their ownership.
This thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
that's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, the situation the same. That people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him. Me, like a new president in 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel. We signed ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken the ceasefire. He killed our people, and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to. I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean. And don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering
position to
questions.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very
You will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influenced.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right
From
about
the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not in a
Mr.
good
Brown,
position.
I was
You don't have the
upset.
cards right now. With us, you start having
I'm not playing
cards.
cards.
Right now, you don't.
I'm very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What do you
You're
think about-
gambling with
what do you
World
think
War
about-
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm
That's
with
back
all
to you.
respect to your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
Very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once? This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's
Can I-
in big
can I-
trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot of
answer?
talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I-
You have a damn good chance of
we are
coming out
staying-
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
allowed.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank-
president, $350 billion.
You
We
voted
gave
for
you
your
military equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
If you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course,
It's
yes.
going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I
Again,
tell
to
you.
say thank you.
I said a lot of
Except
times
that there,
thank you
except
to
that-
American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's
I
very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a
But I
ceasefire.
said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That
It
wasn't
doesn't
with
matter for
me.
you what.
That
what
wasn't
is-
with me.
It
That was with
wasn't
a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your-
that
this
was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards, but without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
It's going to be a tough deal to make.
I don't know what Zelensky was thinking, to be honest. He went at it in such an antagonistic way that there's no way that you go in and basically say, like, I know better than you, start arguing about this type of thing in front of everybody, and that's not a very diplomatic way to achieve what he wants to achieve. Basically, I mean, he needs the United States in order to succeed or even stay afloat. And he's basically bad mouthing both the president and the vice president to their faces when he needs their support. And it seems like this whole mineral deal went down the tubes because of this meeting. And yeah, he was extremely disrespectful. And he is acting like a petty child. And he's also dressed like a child too. He's not dressed in a suit. He's not prepared, seemingly, to deal with adults. He's used to running roughshod basically over a senile president, and that's basically what he had going for him previously. So this is a really bad attempt by Zelensky, basically trying to strong arm the president of the United States, which is such a bad strategy in my opinion. Now let's look at the reaction of the ambassador, the Ukrainian ambassador, how she reacted to this whole argument, this fiery battle. She was not happy.
But you're saying you don't want a
But I
ceasefire?
said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
There
It
wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what.
this is obviously not what sort of the the people preparing this meeting were trying to go for. There's also Marco Rubio's facial expression during the whole thing. He's definitely not happy. Though Vance kind of looks happy. I don't. He might have been hopeful that this sort of went awry in the sense that he wants to delegitimize the view of Zelensky to the American people, or he's just he's like, the American people are finally seeing how Zelensky acts. But this is the image that of Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio had to sort of prepare this conversation, this event, and he is not happy with the outcome. He's not happy with this sort of explosion, and he's silent pretty much the entire time, which I haven't been around for much politics, but JD Vance is definitely participating in this conversation a lot more than any vice president would. I mean, if you think about under Obama, Biden was around, but he was more or less just kind of an old man in the corner. Kamala Harris, as vice president, barely did anything. Mike Pence was just under Trump was basically there to make sure Christian conservatives weren't going to jump ship anytime soon. Now, one of the results of this meeting was that Zelensky actually got kicked out of the White House. So first, let's see him
This is
heading out.
really pretty incredible. We see the
Jackie,
SUV,
hang on with us one
Zelensky's
moment. If you
SUV.
look to your left, you're going to see him. Let's watch.
I still don't understand why he dressed like that to meet with President Trump. Trump always dresses in this suit, always looking nice, and Zelensky basically trying to pose as sort of military man, I guess, but not even. He's not like
This is
wearing
really
a military uniform or anything like that. So I don't know what the strategy with that is. He's maybe trying to act cool or get people's attention. I really don't understand. It's sort of playing the hipster. I mean, he is an actor, of course. So an actor turned president of Ukraine, and he's an American puppet. It's interesting that he's sort of biting the hand that fed him. Because even though Trump's a different president than Biden, he has to, in order to continue his presidency, he has to maintain support of the United States. Otherwise, there would be no Ukraine, basically. Now so this is Fox News covering the exit of Zelensky.
went up to the press area to get an understanding of what we're watching. This is what I was told. The president has kicked Zelensky out of the White House. His delegation right now is telling him that he's got to go home. The president felt disrespected. Officials in the room felt that beyond the language barrier that we've heard some discussion about, Zelensky's body language, shrugging and eye rolling, was ungrateful, disrespectful. And the president feels that Zelensky is not ready for peace, and he can come back when he's ready to talk about peace. But he's not in that position right now. And Zelensky is being told he's got to go. The lunch that they were supposed to have is sitting right outside the hallway, and the press staffers are going to be eating that lunch.
That is extremely comical. Think about it this way: Trump is basically treating Zelensky as a child. I mean, Zelensky is acting like a child, so Trump is basically treating him like a child. He's you must go to your room. You will not be getting lunch. You will think about what you did, and you will come back when you are in the proper mood to discuss sort of politics, basically, or discuss the situation. You've been disrespectful. Yeah, it's amazing to me how sort of low politics has gotten to the point where this is sort of the way world leaders have to engage with each other. I mean, you'd think they'd act mature. You'd think that Zelensky wouldn't be so disrespectful, and then Trump would be able to get through the situation, and maybe they wouldn't have the outcome that each other wants, or that Zelensky wants, or that Trump wants, but you'd at least have a sort of, you wouldn't have this fiery explosion of controversy. And then, Zelensky might retain his, what public opinion he had going for him from the American people. But I'm not sure I'm not sure he can recover from this. And one of the things, I want to make it clear that I want the war to end. Like, the way Trump puts it, with sort of the, he wants the blood to stop, or he wants the dying to stop, and he wants he basically wants Ukraine to survive, but he also wants the war to stop. So some sort of compromise has to take place. And Zelensky has basically put his whole entire career on the line for an idea that he can basically get out of this unscathed territorially, or unscathed sort of in relation to Putin. Of course, the way they portray this is ridiculous, because so many Russians, so many Ukrainians have died. There's no unscathed. Zelensky has to conscript people. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about people having to be conscripted into the army because the Ukrainians don't want to fight this war anymore, or the youth is so decimated that they don't have the people necessary to fight this war. And what are our options? Basically, our options, theoretically, is peace, or the United States really hikes up involvement in the war, which will lead to an even greater bloodbath, possibly World War III, which would be terrible. Absolutely disgusting. I mean, but it'd be nice if there was this fantasy land where, Ukraine maybe would not lose any territory, or all these people would somehow be able to come back, or that sort of thing. Like, you can't bring all the people that died back. It's not, they act like they're playing a video game, basically. So it's absolutely ridiculous. So we have to have adults in the room to make these decisions, and to actually come to a legitimate agreement. I don't necessarily agree with the mineral agreements, that they were going to sign. I don't think the United States should have a real say in Ukrainian politics. I don't think we should have been a part of this to begin with. If the United States hadn't been a part of this, Putin might not have been threatened, or might not have felt threatened by Ukraine possibly joining NATO. Like, it would, this comparison is often thrown around. It's like if Russia made an alliance, or it's the Soviet Union had made an alliance with Mexico. If Mexico had been joined the Warsaw Pact, the United States would not have let that happen. They would have, the United States government probably would have gone to war before Mexico had joined the Warsaw Pact. We were brought close to nuclear war because the Soviet Union had put missiles in Cuba, or were putting missiles in Cuba, and in exchange for not putting missiles in Cuba, the Americans, I believe, we pulled out missiles from Turkey, basically. And that was how these negotiations worked. It's not the end. Like, we have to be realists. We can't be this sort of idealism that sort of the neocons and neoliberals have. They have this idea of this unipolar world, which doesn't exist anymore because they've basically destroyed the US dollar. The economy has been destroyed, has been obliterated, and we're not in a singular unipolar superpower situation anymore. There are rising nations, including China and Russia, that will need to be competed with. Hopefully, not to the point where there'd be war, but us sort of getting into wars, or pushing, basically wars on our behalf in Ukraine is a terrible strategy. This was the whole problem with the whole original sort of strategy. The idea was bleed Russia dry so Russia can never start wars. First of all, I think that's a terrible moral situation to do. I think it's terrible to want to bleed dry a people, to destroy Russia. I don't want to destroy Russia. Not that I think I don't want Russia to destroy Ukraine either. So this whole thing is just terrible. And I appreciate that Trump wants to end this war. And I really do think Zelensky's attitude shows his inability or unwillingness to do this, to want the same. Let's look at Trump's statement. Trump put on Truth Social. We had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It's amazing what comes out through emotion, and I've determined that President Zelensky is not ready for peace if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage. I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Now, I don't really care about the whole, cherished Oval Office. I'm not interested in sort of worshiping at the, national religion of the United States. But I do understand the whole disrespectful nature of Zelensky. He picked at Trump's words. Trump was talking about, you don't have the right cards or whatever. And Zelensky basically started saying, we're not talking about cards, as if maybe Zelensky doesn't know enough English, but I kind of doubt that. I think he's just trying to be petty, trying to be difficult in order to, make it seem like Trump is being maybe disrespectful about sort of what's at stake, which Trump talks about what's at stake. He talks, about the destruction of Ukraine, World War III. He's very adamant about not having that happen, trying to save the country. J.D. Vance is, basically saying that Zelensky should be more grateful, which I think there was a talk of him, campaigning for the opposition, for like Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, in Pennsylvania. I remember that Zelensky visited Pennsylvania like that. Zelensky more or less has, made a deal and put all his goals, or put all of his hopes and dreams onto what would have been the Kamala Harris administration. And that didn't go very well for him. The Kamala Harris did not win. She lost in a landslide. And this Zelensky, it seems like he will not change his approach. And part of me thinks it's because he thinks that the United States deep state and sort of elite class will continue to back him, even if Trump sort of stops. That the administrative state or the judiciary or Senate and House will basically force Trump to continue supplying Zelensky with all the weapons he needs. But I don't think that's necessarily going to happen this time. I think that's a miscalculation on the part of Zelensky. And what makes me think that, first of all, is this something Lindsey Graham, arch warhawk, who I disagree on almost everything with him, and he's a terrible human being, blood on his hands. But the way he responded to the Zelensky debacle is interesting.
I think complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand.
He's been there 8 or 9 times. I feel like Lindsey Graham cares way more about Ukraine than he cares about the United States. That's insane.
And the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with. The way he handled the meeting, the way he confronted the president was just over the top. So I think the relationship between Ukraine and America is important, vitally important. But can Zelensky do a deal with the United States? After what I saw, I don't know.
That is some strong words from a very vicious neocon. So I'm not saying that Lindsey Graham had a epiphany or something. I think he sees that the world is changing. I think he sees that the situation is different, and Lindsey Graham is also recalculating, and trying to maintain some sort of power and influence amongst a somewhat anti-war or more anti-war an anti-war administration. I think he probably has some interests that he wants to make sure are not fall into the wayside, probably regarding Israel, and he's all right with getting rid of Ukraine. That's kind of the neocon thing. The remaining neocons in the United States, or sorry, in the Republican Party, have now accepted that they have to give up the Ukrainian battle, that they no longer can support the Ukrainians. This is kind of also Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is is more or less a representative of this opinion. I'm not sure if I don't believe Marco Rubio has like converted to an anti-war position by any stretch of the imagination. I think at best he's probably being told by Trump, you wanted this job, you will do what I say, and not try and undermine me. But yeah, so I just think that the neocons in the Republican Party, the remaining ones, such as Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, probably have made a new calculation. They've decided we can't get what we want. We can't maintain our level of influence on the Ukraine and the Ukraine war, based on the Ukraine war, and that they needed to change approach. And that approach was basically has become, ditch Ukraine, funding for Ukraine, not anymore, and instead they're going to focus their efforts on Israel, which Trump is much more amenable to. Lord Charles Thomas says, "I wonder what he say. Would he say the same thing or the same word Netanyahu in the Oval Office?" I agree, but I also don't think that would come to that kind of event would not take place. I think Netanyahu is probably a much smarter politician than Vladimir Zelensky. Vladimir Zelensky is more or less a puppet created by the American deep state. So there's no question to me that Zelensky is only as sort of influential as long as he has the backing of other people, basically. I think Netanyahu has a much stronger position and influence and alliances amongst people in both parties, both the Democratic and Republican Party, and all across many countries, that he would not be put in the same situation. I think Zelensky probably thinks he's losing his grip on the situation. He doesn't have any other options. Europe cannot fill in the gaps that the United States was was helping with, was creating, or it's not creating, filling for the Ukrainian war effort to hold on and to prolong this war. And I think he knows, in other words, he has to make a deal with the United States, but he can't bring himself to basically grovel. He can't bring himself to actually act appropriately in order to get what he wants. Which, I mean, this might just be come from the fact that his alliances are out of power. And his position is a lot less popular in the United States than any other place. Anyways, so while like Netanyahu has been around for so long, in these political circles, he has so much more uh, ability as a politician, while Zelensky more or less is just an actor playing a part, getting a lot of money, sacrificing a lot of his people the people of Ukraine, I should say, and letting basically he doesn't have to worry about the consequences. I mean, it's kind of, if you think about like Assad, I mean, this isn't a one-to-one comparison or anything like that. But if you think about how Assad fled Syria when his government was overthrown, I kind of think that's what would happen with Zelensky. He doesn't strike me as the guy who's going to go down with the ship. He's not going to get captured. He's not going to stay as Russian tanks, capture Kiev. I just don't think that's, the kind of person he is. I think he's more along the lines of someone who's going to flee uh, if things aren't looking good, and probably flee to like Britain or something. And he's going to live his life, or he thinks he will live his life in, luxury or something as the hero of Ukraine. But if Trump actually gets peace and achieves peace, and possibly the ousting of Zelensky, not necessarily in any coup or anything like that, but in the sense of another election, that might take place, that, Trump has said that Zelensky's popularity is low. I don't know whether or not to believe that. Some people are saying that's Russian propaganda. I don't know. That's far too, big for me to understand, or not understand, to figure out. I don't know what they're thinking, or what the Ukrainian people want. All I know is that this war needs to end, and Zelensky's not playing ball with that. And as I said, I don't really think that this sort of mineral deal is the correct approach. I think the United States should not put, or increase its ties to Ukraine. I think it should just sit there, get an amicable peace, as much as possible, a practical peace, and pull NATO back from the Russian border, and make peace with Putin, and try and bring Russia back into the fold of the world. And I don't really care. You don't like Putin, you don't have to like Putin. I'm not asking you to. I'm just looking for the ending of hostilities. I'm looking for peace. And I know people, there are people who genuinely are, pro the Ukrainian war effort and stuff like that. I think there are some people from that perspective that are pro the Ukrainian war effort, not from a money perspective, not from a Zelensky perspective, but from a true, patriotism. And good for them. I'm not going to begrudge them that, but the United States can't keep funding this, can't keep being the reason for so much destruction. And I'm not saying that the Russians aren't culpable. Obviously they are, in the sense that they are carrying out this war, but you have to look at the full picture. You can't just look at the action. You have to look at what caused the action, who is making money off of this action, how is this affecting the world, and who's pulling the strings. And much of the American war party, in the state, along with Anthony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, all these people, many of these people are, their allies are part of funding from USAID or USAID, which has been cut. The end of making the world in the United States' image has come. It's the end. It's not going to be happening if USAID is destroyed, and Trump has no interest in that. He's all about making deals, and I really believe that that's true. He is all about making deals, and he's not in. I mean, I think the reason the whole the raw materials thing, I think he's going at it from the perspective is that we've given so much money that we should get something in return. I think the problem with that is that we are going to set ourselves up for an even greater like attachment to Ukraine if we are relying on raw materials from Ukraine, and then in the future, if there comes another blows with Russia, then that would be terrible and lead to greater conflict. And with a president who is interested in war, somebody who's willing to sacrifice thousands of soldiers, or sacrifice the whole planet to World War III in, and not concerned about, and not concerned about the death tolls rising. I think there's a high chance that another president in the near future comes to power like that. A Woodrow Wilson or an FDR, somebody who's not really concerned about people, but worried about or interested in sort of the power dynamics or sort of the ideologies that are going forward. Donald Trump isn't an ideologue by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, anyone who thinks he is being told stuff, is believing a lot of garbage. Trump is a deal maker. He has sort of sometimes good people around him, sometimes bad people around him, and his instincts are mostly good usually, especially when it comes to being anti-war. He may have been bought off probably by sort of Israeli supporters and stuff like that, of course, for the stuff in Israel. He might be playing ball with Netanyahu. I don't know. He might be trying to get something else out of them. But it seems clear that he wants the war to stop in Russia, Ukraine. And I think that's the best position you can possibly come from. Maybe there is a better position you can come from. Maybe there's a better attitude, but Trump just really wants to stop the war. He's not interested in, petty squabbles necessarily between the two countries, though Zelensky has now created a squabble between him and Trump himself, which is not going to go down well. Disrespecting Donald Trump to his face is a really bad strategy, in my opinion, in gaining sort of a good deal. And of course, people are going to attack Trump for sort of attacking Zelensky, even though Zelensky was being an idiot, basically, in front of everyone. I don't understand how you can defend him unless you are just interested in continuing the bloodbath. If anybody has any questions in the chat, if you have super chat, I will answer that. Ayrshire Homelander, good to see you in the chat. Or Charles Thomas, it's good to have you in the chat. Vingle, it's good to have you. Robert Hovish, good to have you as well. Robert says that he was actually at the White House for an hour after the meeting ending. Zelensky even wore that to meet with the Pope. It is all designed to appeal to the younger generation. Yeah, I just don't understand what, I get that it's supposed to appeal to the younger generation. I just don't even understand, really who gets that? Who's like, oh, that's so cool, or oh, he's, I don't even know, to be honest, what those clothes are, because as I said, they're semi militaristic, but I don't know. It just looks terrible. Yeah. Lord Charles Thomas says it really is just crap, isn't it? Yeah, it is. AI says, I think that the whole incident was somewhat staged to the point of both sides were trying to outdo each other in front of the media. I would say the meeting was set up for a purpose, and maybe both Trump and Zelensky came in there probably ready to argue. It's very possible that it wasn't supposed to end the way it was, or they were actually supposed to try and he says, though I think the argument did spiral out of control. Yeah, I think they were coming at it like I think they were prepared to come at it, or to come at each other and to argue. But yes, it definitely went out of control, and it probably damaged the relationship between Zelensky and Trump. I mean, I think generally speaking, you don't put people into the room together unless they have some sort of strategy, unless they have something agreed upon. And it seems like that the agreement basically deteriorated. Anyways, that's all for today. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a great weekend. God bless. Bye.